Hi, I'm Ken Miller.
And I'm David Erdos.
And welcome to the Erdos Miller New Technology Podcast. Today we have another great entrepreneurial spotlight for you with Des Anderson. Des, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you.
Our sponsor is Gibson Reports. Check them out at gibsonreports.com. They have excellent NWD and directional drilling market share reports.
So Desmond, how did you get into oil and gas?
I got into oil and gas, paying off student loans. Kind of story of all of us went out to the oil field and kind of got sucked into the money and stayed out there, worked my way up the rigs, got into directional, and here we are today.
Okay.
Good.
And how did you get started on your own, kind of as an entrepreneur?
I've worked for several major directional companies. I was operations manager for Precision on our last venture. Waited out non-compete for a couple of years, traveling the world selling directional drilling tools, and then decided with a couple of partners it was time to open our own directional company and see what we could do there right in the midst of the downturn. So we had to kind of start innovating to get out of that market because it's a lot slower up there than it is down here.
Are you talking about the 14-15 downturn or the 09 downturn?
The 14-15 downturn, yeah. So that's about when we opened up and started hard at it. We've got into cavern storage stuff, so it's helped us keep relative where the oil and gas market's turned down. So it's helped out a lot.
So what's kept you glued to directional as opposed to going out somewhere else?
It's the innovations in technology, the challenges with directional drilling that's always kept me interested. More so the MWD side and the ever evolving market. There's you watch the bigger companies evolve, and there's new RSSs out, there's new MWD tools out, and it's always been an interest of mine just to play with the technologies.
Okay, fair enough. It's certainly a really cool part of the market for technology. I don't think too many other parts of oil and gas has to marry, mechanical, electronics, and software together in quite the same way. I'm sure there's lots of other places that do, but it is a unique challenge, right? So.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then not only do all of that, put it down hole and kind of put it in a dryer and blend it all together and see how it'll survive.
Well, I like to say that, you do all the great whiteboarding and design you want, but physics is going to be the ultimate test when you put it down hole and see what it actually does, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah. I mean, you can have a shaker table and think it's going to mimic downhole conditions, but it really doesn't. It's very violent.
Did you ever have any moments early on in your career that's really have stuck with you?
Yeah, the first time we hit 99 degrees, it stuck with me. I was kind of a little confused at what was going on early in my career, but there's been a few eureka moments. Seeing some of the new dual telemetry tools come out was very interesting. You see the typical mud pulse tools, you see the typical EM tools, but now I think more so now is watching. The innovations and technology start to flood the market now, which is really interesting.
Do you mean 99 degrees inclination? Or?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You mentioned dual telemetry, and one of the things that really stuck with me is I was involved in a project on an EM tool, right? And we were piggybacking off of a mud pulse tool for a test, right? Mm-hmm. And the system, when we got out there, went in the hole, put the EM on top of the mud pulse, and it was just not working. We just weren't getting any signal. It's an R&D tool. We're trying to figure out what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And I was out there. I was the engineer, and I was working on it for probably 12 hours. And the whole time I was out there, the company man just kept harassing me over and over. He's like, "Hey, you might as well pack it up and go home. You're never gonna get that tool to work, right?"
Yeah.
He, eventually after 12 hours, I found what the problem was, and it was just some simple stuff in the electronics, and I corrected it, and boom, all of a sudden we've got signal, right?
Yeah.
The tool was working fine the whole time. It wasn't the surface gear, right? Mm-hmm. And as soon as we do, I think we're running at 6 hertz, right? And getting 6 bits per second just flying through, right? And everybody kind of comes over and looks at it, and the data rate on the EM is just shocking compared to the mud pulse, right? The mud pulse is probably running half a bit per second, and the EM is running at 6 bits per second. It's holy crap, it's just incredible, right? And I kid you not a half an hour later, the mud pulse tool failed, right? The primary tool under the piggyback, right?
Yep.
And that kept us in the hole, right? And so this tool that he was telling me to pack up and go home with, 12 hours prior saved the run. And that's one of the things that kind of really turned me on to dual telemetry, which was a really interesting experience.
Yeah, I mean that's the name of the game is to keep drilling and always having a safety backup. You see it in the airline industry, you see it in other industries to have that safety, and the name of the game is keep getting some footage in there, and without some sort of backup, you're out to the elements.
Well, it's a really interesting game to try and balance, though. Because you're right. Airlines have all sorts of redundant systems, right? They don't have two sets of wings, and so
good point.
you have to pick your battles as far as that kind of stuff comes, right?
For sure, yeah, no, definitely, and some of the things with the M tools they've come a long way. Yeah. You're seeing extended reach stuff with EM tools now. It's exciting times.
So what are some trends in the market you're seeing right now that are piquing your interest?
A lot of the surface gear is piquing my interest because there's a lot of redundant backup. People starting to combine multiple systems together. I think looking at combining communication systems with the top drives is interesting. Some of the motive stuff where you're starting to get more of the remote command center drilling. We're starting to see a lot more of that down here. Canada, we've been doing that for a long time. So it's nice to see more eyes looking at the information.
And maybe I'm out of the loop, but I find the motive technology and the other directional drilling guidance systems to be extremely innovative and cool. I haven't seen them become as prolific as I would have thought I would by this year, right? So maybe they just need some more time, but I know they're coming along, but it's not. I figured by now it'd be on every single rig, right?
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's some of the things that you look at and wonder: is it being used properly? Is it all encompassing? Do they have the right information? Yeah. Maybe it's because it was bought up and is with one company now. Maybe if it was out to the general public, you'd see a lot more of the information getting across.
So I know a lot of the ongoing conversation for years has been, manned versus unmanned, right? Like, what's your take on that?
I think you always need somebody out there. It's kind of like having a car drive around with nobody in it. Eventually, at some point, unfortunately, electronics fail, and you need to have somebody to correct that. But I think as a safety, getting less people off of location is better. I think, kind of coming around your building and seeing what you guys are doing, the surface systems are getting smarter, so I think you can bring people off of location and not have to worry about it because you do have the checks and balances that it needs.
So if we maybe take a step back from kind of the technology, you've had a good portion of your career kind of as an employee working for different companies, and now you've had a good portion of your career as an entrepreneur. Yep. Can you maybe just highlight some of the differences?
Well, the entrepreneur, I think you're pushing yourself harder. If you're working for another company, you have your goals, you're set to do that. Whereas entrepreneurs, it's my wallet. So if I want to innovate something, I simply just will focus on it and spend it. The nice thing is, being an entrepreneur, I don't have a bunch of people to check with if we're going to do that spend, if we're going to continue with the project, or we're just going to cut it short. Yeah. So the decision making is a lot quicker, a lot more efficient, I think, with smaller companies than large companies. I've been in R&D groups in large companies, and it's very slow and hard to get things to do. And so I think you're going to see stuff like you guys are building coming out of a smaller group of people that are more nimble and more efficient at getting technology out.
What are some things that have surprised you about being an entrepreneur that you didn't expect going into it?
I thought I'd sleep more, but I don't. Everybody thinks that it's nice to be an entrepreneur, and you're not at work. But the thing is, you got to balance your personal life. I have children, and your work life. I find that I work too much and too long of hours. Whereas 9 to 5 job, you kind of shut it off and you go home and do your thing. Whereas being an entrepreneur and an inventor, I'm always on. I'm always thinking about things. I'm always doing research. Whereas just being an employee, I never did that.
Yeah, this is gonna be really embarrassing for me. But one of my escapist fantasies when things get really tough as an entrepreneur is like having a 9-to-5 job sounds really nice sometimes.
It does. So appreciate it.
Yeah, and then you know, then I realized that I would never be happy in that situation for more than 2 weeks, and if someone hired me, I'd probably get fired, you know, with like 6 weeks or something. just my personality, I can't stop, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's entrepreneurs. I think generally have that. Kind of the same background, you know. I'm driven. I want to do a bunch of things. I get complacent at a 9-to-5 if I'm handcuffed and I can't invent something. So I get bored very quickly, and you know, I think a 9-to-5 would be my downfall as well. I think I'd get fired.
So we have a panel coming up called NWD in the 20s. Shannon, I'm going to break the fourth wall again. When is it again? Remind me. 21st and 22nd. So, and what we're talking about there is like what's going to be happening with NPT and technology over the next, like, you know, 10 years. So like 2020 to 2030, right?
Yeah.
Give me some of your predictions. Like, what are your thoughts on like what's going to pan out in the next 10 years?
I think because we're drilling faster and deeper, I think survey accuracy is going to come to the main focus. I believe that you know, the ellipses have to tighten up. I think survey points. And we're selling surveys. Realistically, is what we're doing. I don't think there's enough checks and balances. We're going to see new innovative tools like you guys are building come to the forefront, where you know, you can go deeper, faster, and more accurate. And I think once that information's up, I think there's going to be a lot more checks and balances and better communication. I'd like to see some of the analytics come into play and communication get a lot better on location. We're seeing that you know, everybody wants to drill really fast. Drilling practices, they go out the window. So, you know, if you can get that balance with good information and those checks and balances, so we can actually say to the E&P companies, hey, we're beyond operational limits here, and the accuracy is going to suffer for it. I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the future.
So, you know, we keep talking about longer and longer laterals, right?
Correct.
How far can it go, like just reasonably?
Wow. You know, as far as physics will let it, you know. You know, at some point...
is there not some point of diminishing returns, right, when you're drilling a 30,000-foot lateral or something?
Yeah, and it's going to be, you know, how well can you clean the well? How straight is it going to be? You know, what's the ROI? It comes to that. You know, is going out that far going to make you that much more money? I
can tell you that, you know, like if just an extreme example, a 30,000-foot lateral, something just totally ridiculous, tripping would be pretty miserable.
Yeah, I'm an old rig hand, and I tell you, to have some dead arms after that, you know, the old numb arms where you don't feel them. So yeah, tripping would be miserable. And then storing all the pipe.
It'd be interesting to like predict like where the long laterals might kind of top off and hit like a natural point of diminishing returns, you know, because I mean, you know, what I've learned is that a lot of the lateral lengths right now are just dictated by how much lease space they have, right? And they're just trying to go as far as they can within the lease space in one straight shot, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
I think a lot of reentries are going to come to the forefront too, going back and seeing what the old equipment did, because I don't think many of those wells were very accurate, and I think if they get back into doing some of that, they might be surprised at what they can reinvigorate.
Well, you know that 60% of all statistics are made up. But having said that, which is also made up statistics, somebody told me the day that like something like we've only been recovering 10 or 20% of the viable resources in a lot of the wells we've been drilling, right? And so going back and doing that kind of work and tapping those resources is both really exciting and really terrifying, because we can already flood the market with shale oil anyways, right? So
True.
like, how much more is there to get?
Yeah.
Is that referring to the wells drilled today or like older wells?
Even today, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, certainly the older wells too. I think people think there's a lot of untapped resources there, right? So
I think that kind of comes back to survey accuracy, because sometimes if you don't really end up where you want to be, you can leave a lot on the ground.
Yeah.
Well, you got to remember, you know, directional instruments are only half the story, right?
Right.
Because you have your geosteering, right? And so,
That's right.
You know, your local changes in the field, you know, your directional sensors aren't going to help you find that out, right? So you really need to have more advanced geosteering instruments to then find your way around locally within what you're trying to do, right? So, so Des, I have I just signed up for a bet on longbets.com, right?
Yeah.
And this is a website where you can put a bet on the internet and have everyone see it. And but it's supposed to be for like a really long period of time, right? And so I said by 2030, more than 50% of the wells being drilled will have a telemetry system on there capable of in excess of 10 bits per second. Mud pulse or, EM, right?
Yeah.
And so another 10 years of development, right? So I'll ask you your take. Bet against me. Would you bet over or under?
I would bet even. I think you're pretty accurate on that. Reason being is I think that once we get reliability under our belts, I think I think the data can come up faster. There's a lot of innovative companies that are doing stuff like you guys are that is going to get us to that spot. Technology is keeping up. We're looking at stuff that you can do with your iPhone that you never would have thought you could do. And now that we're seeing that creep into the directional market, anything's possible.
Well, so it's interesting you say once we get reliability under control, it's kind of an ever-changing game, isn't it, right? Like,
absolutely.
Like we make the NPT better, then the bit gets better, and the agitators get stronger, and we had to make the NPT better again, and it's just like kind of this never-ending game to play, right?
That's right. Yeah. But there's a lot more eyes, I think, on the MWD systems. Again, kind of like you guys, us, we're taking off one little bit of reliability to innovate and focus on. We know we can't do a whole bunch, nor do we want to do a whole bunch. We want to focus on our little niche part and add that to the market where you guys are, doing so much more on the electronics end, and I think once these start marrying, we can keep up to what's going on.
Well, it's kind of an interesting question, right? Is the future integrated or modular, right? Do you think one group can make a more reliable system overall with an integrated design, or do you think it's actually going to yield more reliability to have different groups focused on their different expertises and then bring that system together outside of any one company?
I think one company is going to bring forth the majority of it, and then it was kind of like GE in the old days. Here's the old tensor tool, and then you saw little branches of companies bringing things out. And was it better? Not really. There's some good stuff that came out, but there was a lot of real misses on that. So I think one company as a core, if they have enough funding and enough intelligence behind them, is going to bring a lot to the table. There may be a couple groups that complement those innovations, but you never know. I mean, that's the thing with innovation. Somebody just may walk up with the next best thing that none of us were looking at.
Blow you away, right?
Yeah. It's
Gotcha.
That's the beauty of technology.
Well, any other thoughts to share with us before we wrap up?
No, I just really thank you guys for having us down, and appreciate the tour, and kudos to what you guys have going on, and I encourage everybody to come check it out.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us from the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Ken Miller.
And I'm David Erdos.
Our guest today has been Des Anderson.
Thanks for having me.
Remind everybody of your company's name.
Standard Directional
Standard
Service.
Directional. Yeah. Check out our sponsor, Gibson Reports, excellent NWD and directional drilling market share reports, gibsonreports.com. Thank you.
Thank you.